As the situation in Gaza rapidly gets worse, Canadians who have been trapped in the middle of the violence have a way out.
Global Affairs Canada confirms 59 Canadians have now escaped the war-torn territory through the Rafah border crossing with Egypt.
I know families and loved ones have been waiting anxiously. Finally, the first group of Canadians were evacuated out of Gaza.
As they cross the border, it's with the heaviness of what they've been through and what's been left behind.
Happy I'm going to Canada, but my heart here is with my families, my friends, they all died. I got over 30 friends I lost. My family, I lost over 20 people in my family.
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get my parents' names and my sister's names on the list as well, so I left them in Gaza in such a horrible situation.
But not all Canadians have been able to leave yet.
We were going to see two groups of Canadians coming through the border, one of 200 people, one of over 200 people. So instead of having more than 400 people coming through in two kind of groups, we've had this one group of 80 people or 80 names on the list, of whom some have made it through.
So with all the chaos, delays, and confusion, how did we get to this moment? Until today, Canadians in war-torn Gaza have been stuck in limbo.
My daughter and I have Canadian citizenship, she says. We've been struggling for 5 days, going back and forth to the Rafah crossing.
Their families back home have been desperately trying to get them out. Since the brutal Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th, Gaza has become increasingly unstable. As many people in Gaza have said, and as you'll hear from this Canadian in a clip gathered by Al Jazeera, safe travel may not be possible.
We have been contacted by the Canadian Embassy. They give us these useless tips. They tell us, stay cautious, make sure you're in a safe place, but there really is no safe place.
The place that Canadians have been told to go is here. It's the most southern point of exit out of the Gaza Strip, and it's the only border crossing that's not controlled by Israel. It borders Egypt, and it's the only crossing that's still accessible out of Gaza. Canadians and others have been pushing Egypt to open up the border to foreign nationals looking to escape the conflict.
We're very, very angry and very disappointed. Our government has failed us and continue to fail all Canadians who are currently stuck in Gaza.
Negotiations to get people out of Gaza started almost immediately following Israel's retaliatory attack against Hamas. But that hope didn't last long.
The international agreement that was theoretically in place to allow that to happen had fallen apart.
Canadian families went to the Rafah crossing and had to turn and go back.
The border crossing for right now is still closed.
At the time, Canada's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Melanie Joly, said that the border was closed because of ongoing violence and chaos at the Rafah crossing. No foreign nationals stuck in Gaza were getting out. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, more negotiations, more progress, and more setbacks. On November 1st, the General Authority for Border Crossings in Gaza, which is run by Hamas, published a list of foreign passport holders from 15 countries who would be the first people able to leave Gaza that day. 500 names. Left off that list, Canadians. All 400 citizens, permanent residents, and family members, according to numbers from Global Affairs Canada.
We checked our names, and sadly, our names were not on that list. And we're confused because we talked to the Canadian government, and they said that we are registered.
In the end, not all 500 people on the list got through the border. Only 340 made it out. The New York Times reported that included people from Bulgaria, Finland, and Indonesia, and other countries, as well as aid workers from around the world. A day later, more people get through, about 340. That group included more than 100 Americans. But again, no Canadians. But later, a glimmer of hope. The government received word that there would be windows for Canadian nationals to evacuate Gaza as early as Sunday, 4 days later. But before we even reached the weekend, another devastating setback.
Around 4 this afternoon, an ambulance outside Shifa, the main hospital in Gaza, was destroyed by an Israeli aircraft. In a crowded area, 13 people, including bystanders, were killed.
The IDF says the ambulance was being used by Hamas to transport militants and weapons, and that, quote, Hamas terrorists were killed. But the border was shut again. for everyone.
A dispute over security guarantees for injured Palestinians is reportedly part of the reason for this shutdown. Canadians in Gaza and their families back home are caught in the middle.
They contacted my father yesterday, and they told him there has been delays because of the borders being closed today, so you'll be pushed back to Tuesday.
And Canadians were told to keep waiting for a day that was feeling further out of reach.
They sent me her picture, but guess what? That picture wasn't helpful for me. I want to see my daughter, to hug her, to touch her, to see like that. That's how I can feel her. That's how I can stay beside her.
On Monday, the border opened again. Another bit of hope. But of the few that did cross, none were Canadian.
The Rafah crossing between Gaza and Egypt did reopen today after being closed for 2 days. Now, the question is whether Canadians will be in that next group of people getting out of Gaza.
Remember, there were as many as 400 Canadians and their families waiting to get out. Families waiting back home have said they feel frustrated and helpless.
My father is a 73-year-old man. He went to Gaza on vacation. That turned to a huge nightmare for himself and for us as well. His health is deteriorating.
Being stuck in this nightmare, I completely lost hope. I even lost hope in humanity. I don't understand how this is still happening and it's still going, and no one is able to make an end to this. So honestly, I don't have hope. I don't know if we're going to survive this.
It's been 1 month since those brutal attacks by Hamas. 1 month since Gaza was plunged into crisis and chaos. And now, with constant airstrikes and ongoing ground invasion and supplies and fuel shortages, the situation on the ground is getting more chaotic by the hour.
I lost my family, my best friends and her family, and we lost a lot of things. We don't have any power, we don't have electricity, and we don't have water in Gaza Strip. So we are here in Rafah crossing to evacuate.
Many are prepared to travel on short notice, ready with their documents in hand. Once they cross, Global Affairs Canada consular officials meet them on the Egyptian side of the border to help them get to Cairo by bus. Once they cross into Egypt, they're only allowed to stay for 72 hours.
We'll bus them all the way from Rafah to Cairo. That's about a 6 to 8 hour trek. And then when they'll arrive here, we will take care of them. We will give them shelter, food, medical services as well, and we'll make sure they get to Canada as early as possible.
A sigh of relief for their loved ones waiting anxiously here in Canada.
The fact that the first group got out is very encouraging. I believe this will build the momentum to get the rest of them out.
But for the hundreds of people still left, still waiting in the middle of a war zone, every minute must feel like so much longer.